what is next in the bag of tricks. And of course on 7.14, we have got a lot of stuff to choose from.
Well, Trick's bag doesn't have a boar in it anymore because Sejuani is off the table. Of course, that was the champion we saw the level 2 gank from, and also the Braum now taken away. Those two champions have been used often as a pair, and Mithy has been playing a whole bunch of Braum recently. It's been a very good pick, denies a lot in team fights. As we continue through a fast-paced ban phase, the Kalista is a big laning and early skirmish strength AD carry. Vitality may be looking to put priority on Thresh here as the first pick, because Caitlyn is the likely last ban.
There we go, so G2 removing that one along with the Zac and the Elise. So for Vitality, they get the lock-in on the Cho'Gath, and we've seen that jungle, we've seen that top. And of course, G2 get a quick pickup on the Gragas right now for Trick. It makes a lot of sense, exactly what he's going to want to do in the early game and also in those engagements.
So of course 7-14, we have a couple of other tanks in priority. The Cho'Gath in the top lane, in the jungle, has that flex potential. We'll have to see where Vitality end up putting it. Caitlyn banned away is another one of these laning AD carries. I think Vitality looked surprisingly good with Ashe last week. And I think if they were to go something like Ashe Tahm Kench here, maybe sacrifice that mid lane matchup that we were talking about for Nukeduck about wanting to see, that could be the setup that could get Vitality rolling. They were very active with the fights.
Very true. Now, G2 locking in the Thresh. Of course, Vitality have their AD carry, and this is exactly what you said they were going to do, or what you were looking forward to. So now Steelback's got himself that Ashe.
But now you have the danger of a Syndra or a LeBlanc here from G2. If they want to take mid lane focus and then ban two mid laners, Nukeduck finds himself in a tough situation. Other options is G2 may need to pick up an AD carry here in order to get a winning matchup, or at least a stable matchup in the bottom lane. And Zven on this Varus has been a little bit vocal when we've talked to him behind the scenes about how Varus is still a good pickup and he actually rates it decently. Into Ashe, you can push her in. You still have crowd control. You basically have more of a powerful laning phase than an Ashe typically would.
Yeah, he can match that lane pressure. He can also match his teamfight engageability. Both those ultimates very clutch for the teams as we enter ban phase 2. Jace is taken off the board, and Vitality respond with the Gnar. These are going fast today.
Yeah, Gnar matchup we actually saw lose to the Cho'Gath in some of our games early on. So Vitality, although we have seen that Cho'Gath in the top lane, maybe indicating that that's Cho jungle and they're mixing things around. Syndra is still available, but LeBlanc is now off the card, so G2 not looking for perhaps that blind pickable mid laner here. Maybe they actually want to give PerkZ the matchup and put Nukeduck in the back foot. Now, Renekton has to start drifting up in priority if you're G2 looking for a blind pickable top laner.
Yeah, 5 seconds still for Vitality, though, to ban out the last, and they're thinking about it's going to be the Shen. So still focus on that top side. Now, G2, do they lock the Croc? 20 seconds left to go.
So if Taliyah gets locked in here with Syndra available, that would give a laning matchup, at least with a harass pattern in the early game, to Nukeduck, but would indicate PerkZ doing what he did against H2K. Some of this utility on the Taliyah, you have good damage, good roaming potential. We'll have to see what Vitality answer with. Another option would be a Kassadin. Does very well into Taliyah, and it would give Vitality a lot of late game insurance. And they've already got good crowd control to start the fights. They can get the Cho'Gath there. They can get the fight started, so maybe pick a little bit of scaling alongside it.
Yeah, why not? But there's also several other very safe mid laners to try and deal. Looks like it is going to be the Orianna locked in for Nukeduck, and there's definitely some synergy there. If the Cho'Gath can get up to the front line, the Tahm Kench can deliver somebody. He can also be that ball delivery system. And the final pick now for Vitality looks like it's going to be Maokai.
Well, we're playing count the tanks here. You got 3 on the side of Vitality with good engage tools. Very solid engage and team fighting out of Vitality, as well as the macro play the numbers champion of Tahm Kench, who can very easily get fights going, bring the numbers advantage in Vitality's favor.
All right, so the only question left to answer is what does Expect take, and the obvious is always going to be the Renekton. So he gets that lock in now as the timer ticks away. So G2 Esports on their side, they're definitely not lacking some engage themselves. Looks like they're a little bit more for the bully, though, especially up top.
They got a decent amount, but that top lane matchup, as you're talking about, is a little bit more lane-focused out of Expect. Of course, we saw the Jarvan a couple of times out of him. He was being put on that into bad matchups. But then in game 3 against H2K, Expect pulls out the Renekton, looks dominant in the laning phase. And now we get to see a bit of an unorthodox lane matchup coming into 7-14. The Cho'Gath versus the Renekton.
I don't know what is unorthodox anymore, to be honest.
It's a game of sustain up in the top lane right now.
Well, we'll see if anybody makes any trips up there. We do know that PerkZ likes to get his roam on early on this Taliyah. See if that ends up panning out. Had a lot to say on it, actually, just this previous week to Slingshot Esports in an interview.
Yep, a lot of interesting information on lane matchups specifically. I want to look holistically at this game for Vitality. They have a big tanky front line. They have great team fight with the Ashe, the Orianna, the Maokai, these big picks that'll be difficult for G2 to take down if they get tanky. The problem is if G2 can get a laning phase advantage with the Taliyah, which can push in, with the Renekton, which can win the lane, the Varus can do the same. If G2 can actually start fights at the point earlier in the game where they start spiking, Vitality may never get tanky enough to be able to actually finish the fights.
All right, the champs are locked, the players are set and ready to go. Expect with the last minute stretch out as the crowd is getting revved up, and G2 Esports surging right now. Looking to take down Team Vitality, who need to pick up all the points they can to want to stay competitive for playoffs. But we are on to Summoner's Rift for Game 1.
And the crowd here in Berlin are very hyped up, doing the warm-up before the show, and I got hit by a wall of energy. So we love feeding off the energy. We'll see whether Vitality and G2 give us an explosive game, because when there's this many team fight components, people are gonna fight, Pyra.
Oh, it's gonna be good, but I want to see what G2 are able to bring out early on. You talked about the win condition, the laning advantage. And maybe they try to go for a little cheese of their own. 5-man invade. Nukeduck's going to back right off. Throws out the command attack, and that's about all he can do.
Yeah, not too much more from that as G2 assume control of the bottom side. As always with this kind of thing, you swap it for the top side. Vitality will get vision control top side. And it's been interesting now with the rise of Maokai, the rise of a lot of these tank champions, how the early game pathing actually goes. We've seen bunch of Maokais just throwing saplings in multiple camps and getting hard leashes from their team. I'm wondering where Djoko's going. Well, there's one of the cats.
Yeah.
It's out of the bag, man.
Okay, we're getting off to one of those kinds of starts.
When we're both laughing at that joke, it's a bad joke, Pyra.
Yeah. Actually, I think you can just say whenever I laugh at a joke, it's probably a bad one.
You're a bit too hard on yourself on that one, but look, we're watching the super leash on the bottom side. Of course, G2 know this is happening thanks to their vision control. That's what happens when Steelback and Vander come up and help on the red buff first. I would almost expect Djoko to be going blue buff right after this. We'll watch his pathing.
So we've seen the Super Leash for a little while now. It originated seemingly in North America, and we saw stuff like in Italy, especially Mike Young on Phoenix 1 doing it. And it allowed him to get into lane very fast to a fast level 3, but now we have this tank jungle meta.
Okay.
What is this going to benefit? Just getting to faster level 6?
So on this point, this may actually be one of these leashes with the experience quintessence that we have seen a couple of times, but Djoko's actually heading out of the Raptor camp, so I'm still interested by his pathing early on. We've seen people go red Raptors onto the Rift Scuttler and then go into a lane very quickly, but Djoko's looking perhaps for a topside play after this. You can see, there we go, finally that third kitten has been aggroed onto the blue buff.
All right, keeping an eye out to see if Djoko does go for that early gank. Now, Cabochard is already pushing Expect in with those spikes, level 2 versus level 2, and the Gragas having a little bit of trouble. At the beginning, of course, Cho'Gath significantly more powerful now on this patch. We saw what he was able to do yesterday, in all honesty, getting pretty fed up in the top lane on the side of Splice, but Vitality are going to hope they can do the same thing again with Cabochard.
And of course, that Cho'Gath gets a massive amount of sustain alongside the Doran shield as well. So this was the play that they were looking for. It's a topside play at level 3 for Djoko, and they're looking on the Krugs for now, at least, to farm them out. And maybe give them the opportunity to dive Expect under the tower.
Yeah, double buffs on Djoko. He would be spotted as the Tri-Brush is warded out unless he comes from behind the lane. Expect on half his health bar right now. That mini wave's starting to melt here, and we can see the Maokai trying to make a decision. He wants to go in, slice and dice. There's the silence. Djoko's still trying to wait.
Yeah, I don't believe Djoko was actually spotted on that, but now he will be as he's coming into tower range. Cabochard is going to have to go in on this too.
All right, throws down the cat, gets the Bramble Smash down. Cabochard, they're trading on the aggro. Twisted advance, he takes a lot of damage, but it's going to be first blood. And Djoko is narrowly getting out of this one. Smashes down the minions, and that was close.
Calculated, maybe. Very low health on Djoko there. He basically committed in and was expecting to get out of tower range with the W, but look, Mithy on the roam.
Okay, he gets the flay out. Nukeduck does not have or he's not used his escapes, I should say, but he does take some punishment. PerkZ cannot take him out.
Mithy held the hook for so incredibly long in that trade, just looking to try and get the flash out of Nukeduck and through an attempted prediction as Nukeduck was going to try and flash back under his tower, but Nukeduck on the next level, making sure he didn't even use that summoner on that exchange, so Mithy roams out of lane, doesn't end up getting all that much from it.
All right, Djoko and Trick kind of playing now you see me, now you don't in the jungle as Cabochard TPing back up top. He picks himself up. A Glacial Shroud is going to have that CDR available to him as well as a little extra mana and armor.
And that's going to mean bad news because that's going to be an earlier Righteous Glory. As we see, the jungle is still trading.
It is
smites that out.
Pretty terrifying when a Cho'Gath can run at you even faster. And now there's a level advantage here for Cabochard. So the focus up top is really paying off for Vitality.
You know what's even scarier? When a Cho'Gath pops Righteous Glory and you get hit by an Ashe arrow out of nowhere. And then the Cho'Gath just catches you, because we saw the Unicorn struggle without the engage tool in the very first game of 7-14 on the Cho'Gath.
All right, switch back once again, thinking he could fight out. There's the Rupture. A few more spikes. Ooh, Feral Scream as well, so it's hard for the Croc to really do a whole lot here. Now, there is a lot of vision for G2 inside the Vitality jungle, as Trick had been kind of throwing his weight around inside there and keeping tabs on him, but he's not able to stop him from farming.
And this is a really interesting prospect here, because I think a lot of the matchups for top lane are getting heavily tilted by this Cho'Gath. When you look at it, like Renekton typically doesn't struggle in a laning phase, but this massive amount of sustain that comes from the Cho'Gath just allows him to out-sustain expect, and then maybe we'll see the Bramble Vest come through. We saw it picked up on a Jarvan into Renekton, and it just completely contained him, denied so much of what Renekton brings to the party.
Yeah, speaking of tilt, that is definitely something that can induce it. But let's check back in with another lane, because we really wanted to highlight the mid laners in this game. Obviously, Nukeduck has been the Vitality win condition, but for G2, PerkZ has been improving significantly ever since Rift Rivals. It's been a resurgence, and, you know, I asked him backstage, hey, is Lane Kingdom back? He's like, it never left, baby.
Just went on hiatus. There was a writer's strike for a while. As PerkZ, you can see how dominant he's been over the last 2 weeks. That's what we're focusing here, is PerkZ's most recent performance. Now, the guy on the other side of the rift from him, Nukeduck, he's been performing all split long. You can see above average in pretty much all of the metrics we normally track for laning and dominance. And look, Nukeduck has picked up multiple quadras and just big performances this split. And we've been waiting for this performance out of Nukeduck for years. All the way since like the old Season 3 Lemon Dog style. Like, we wanted to see Nukeduck putting up big numbers.
So I have a theory about Nukeduck, because that picture that we had of him was from the start of the split. You can see in the player picture right now, there's a little bit different, it's a little fuzzier in the face. I think as his beard grows, so does his power. He's getting better every week.
Yeah, maybe it's the secret of his power.
Yeah.
Bit like Samson. One day he'll shave and Vitality will just lose horribly.
Well, so hopefully we don't let him anywhere near a Razor for the time being. But on this Orianna, he's going to be able to scale.
That's so much sponsorship for him.
I guess there's always opportunities. All right, so Mithy, he made a trip to the mid earlier on. He's actually going to be going into the jungle this time around. So Mithy has been quite active to try and keep eyes on what Vitality are bringing. But they're unable to really stop Djoko from kind of rolling forward. Right,
and Djoko's been getting closer to that level 6 mark. Of course, the new ultimate on Maokai, very good at controlling big areas of the map with team fights. Now, we're talking about supports. They're going to need to save him here.
Fish on a line. It's pretty easy.
That's one strength of Tahm Kench, and another was exactly what I was about to talk about, and that's that you can make a map play with your bottom lane very early. Look, Steelback is level 6. When we see 6 on Vander, they may lane swap, but it is not Vitality heading to the top side of the map. It is G2 currently looking to set up camp in the Vitality top side jungle.
Well, might be useful to keep Djoko really out of there. Can't get the blue buff to give away over to Nukeduck. Meanwhile, the arrow comes into the bot side. Oh, hooked on a line once again. Zven gets the heal, pulls the lantern back, and there's the TP coming in for expect. Vander looks like he's sacrificing himself right now. Flayed back, gray health on, but it is a matter of time before Zven gets that kill.
Yeah, it was Vitality making a play in their own lane, bot lane, with that Ashe arrow, but Cabochard couldn't block the TP, didn't have TP available, and it looked like there were just enough members of G2 around with all of this vision control that expect found a good window to teleport down to that bottom lane.
Yeah, Vitality's bottom lane definitely feeling confident because the BF sort of been picked up by Steelback. It was matched only by that Cutlass, and after the arrow was spent, it seemed like a good opportunity.
Steelback had been 6 for a while here, and they're trying to catch Zven if they can, but Zven actually hit 6 at the beginning of this trade. that's where the ultimate comes back out. Vander has no opportunity but to run them away from the fight. And Zven expects a Mithy just get an easy kill from Vitality going aggressive when perhaps they didn't even need to at that point. They were trying to get a kill perhaps before Zven had his ult, but easily hit.
Yeah, well, sometimes when the fight goes awry, support ends up having to be the sacrifice, and Vander was the one that time around. Steelback making it out nice and safe. And he does have that CS advantage on the Ashe, so he is able to at least get a little bit more pressure back for himself, but unfortunately Zven's equalized that on gold and then some. So he's working his way towards that Blade of the Rune King even faster than he would have before.
Steelback is actually up in lane quite significantly when you look at farm and experience. He's been a level ahead of both G2 bot lane members and 2 levels ahead of his supports. As Vander has spent a bunch of time in the bottom side jungle getting wards down, making sure that they can control at least enough of the vision. But I want to see this level 6 play on Tahm Kench. He's only level 5 right now, and that's actually hurting Vitality.
Yeah. It's been a lot of focus on being mobile, on moving around, and speaking of, they're not the only ones that really are doing it. PerkZ, as he moved into that jungle to take away some Raptor camps yet again, he had gone for the early Merc Tread finish. His opponent, Nukeduck, had gone for the Sork Shoes before anything else. So this game is really all about being fleet of foot.
Yeah, a lot about that mobility. I do wonder, though, going back to our discussion on team compositions and how Vitality, if they get tanky enough, will be difficult for G2 to kill, because apart from the Varus, it might be tough to eat through the tanks.
Well, Vitality is trying.
They want to play for the later game.
Oh, there's the Rupture, yeah. Dominus on. I mean, this is where you start to see that Renekton match really starting to pan out. Despite the fact that he's down on a kill, he's only sitting on the Phage. Expect was able to push Cabochard back, and, well, there we go. Yes, we know PerkZ. Every time you go down to the bottom lane, you get a candy.
Well, he hasn't been there yet.
I know, so he doesn't get one yet.
Does Zven feed everyone candy?
I don't think he has enough, to be honest.
It's a lot of candy if they end up playing around bottom lane.
Well, we'll see if he gets any more, but for the time being, it's just the dual laners. Trick is there as well, but he's going to be walking straight into a ward, control ward, I should say, of Vitality's. Makes moves into the mid lane. PerkZ clearing away, the ball there. Okay. Body slams forward, and he gets the barrel, actually knocking Nukeduck forward, but not on the same page with PerkZ, who wasn't there.
The rest of the team are on the way, though. Look, Mithy and Zven are here.
Oh, Vander, he's caught up inside the box, but Djoko is taking the Nature's Grasp to get the root down onto Mithy, and Djoko claims the first kill of this fight. G2 decide they don't want any more of that, but they get a knock-up, a silence, and everything on top of Zven. Vander is the one who licks him.
Yeah, Cabo actually feasting. Looked like he didn't get enough damage down to get the kill there, so Cabochard will be a little bit disappointed that he didn't get a stack from a champion. But look, Vitality, we talked about how good their front line, how good their team fight is, and Djoko showed you can just start that forest rolling very early, and G2 just get locked down. Mithy dies, and Vitality are right back in this game.
Yeah, good push for them. Now half the damage dealt already onto the tower, so with 4 members, they should be able to secure that first brick. 400 gold or 200 gold to lead, but they're going to get it a lot more now as Djoko finishes off the tower 12 minutes in, and this game's starting to accelerate.
These are 2 of the teams that over the last few weeks we've been perhaps the most critical about. The fact that Vitality, we were critical about Steelback in the team fights and his damage output. He's been stepping up significantly. He's ahead in the laning phase. He's going to have good impact utilizing this Ashe. G2, on the other hand, we've been talking about struggling with meta before and after Rift Rivals. They've started to come back, and look, they just weren't prepared for this fight. This many tanks is just difficult to deal with that amount of crowd control. From here, Zven, Rupture, Silence, Feast, Vander with the auto attack, stealing away the kill.
I mean, if you can't finish it with the Feast,
no
stacks for you.
But look, another fight starting.
Oh boy, Zven, he's going to take the Lantern out to safety, but Trick is caught by himself. He's going to get knocked up once again, arrows being fired into him, and he's getting licked by Vander. He can't quite get over the wall, and this time, Cabochard has himself a meal.
At this point, Vitality can eat so much that G2 may as well be a buffet, because look, between Tahm Kench, Cho'Gath, everybody is in danger of getting swallowed down into this madness of team fighting, and Vitality will be happy at this. They can just throw out all of their engage tools anytime they want, and if G2 are not fully prepared for the fight, Vitality are very likely to win it.
Yeah, and we're starting to see some multidimensionality coming out of the Vitality team, obviously enabled with some of these picks like Cho'Gath. We talked about Nukeduck being the key to victory. Well, guess what? Cabochard's got 2 kills, and we already saw yesterday what a fed Cho'Gath can do.
And this is a fed Cho'Gath with the Righteous Glory already. 2 kills plus Mercury Treads. Level 9 might be down in experience, but 5 stacks already for Cabochard. Those Mercury treads are going to start becoming a little bit more prevalent on G2's side of things. I wouldn't be surprised to see every single member looking towards that if they haven't already bought their level 2 boots. But look, Rift Herald bot side, a little bit too big to eat for Cho'Gath.
Yeah, that's going to give you indigestion. G2, you know, it's worth giving them the credit that they did manage to secure that Rift Herald in all of the craziness that allowed Vitality to push down the first tower bot. You're often going to be able to trade for something like this Rift Herald, but it's still up, and Cabochard's the only one defending it. As Djoko's forced to flash away, it's going to get a second charge into this inner.
Yeah, not too big to feast when you actually have feast for Cabochard. Just gets that eat
I
on
believe that
the
counts as
Rift
an epic monster.
It counts as a regular monster, according to the Harbor over here.
Oh. All right.
So I can actually tell you the exact breakdown of Cho'Gath's stacks right now. 4 from minions, 1 from monsters, and 1 from champions.
And that specific champion was not Zven, but Trick.
0 from epic monsters currently.
Good to know. All right, so we're 15 minutes into this game. Vitality do not have the gold lead. It's important to note because G2 do have 2 towers to the 1. So despite the fact that Vitality got it first and they have 3 more kills, they're not in the gold lead.
And not in the gold lead, as G2 from the towers were able to recoup so much of that as you're talking about. I want to take a moment just to explain the importance of why there's a differentiation between the epic monsters and regular monsters, because Cho'Gath is still quite new in the meta, and people aren't quite used to it. So you can stack infinitely from killing champions with Feast or epic monsters with Feast. Minions and monsters have a hard cap at 6. You can't get more than that. And of course, that scaling attributes to your maximum health, the damage scaling of percent max health of your enemies on your E. Lots of cool stuff comes from all of that stacking.
And you get big.
Yeah. That is capped at 10, unfortunately. You can't just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Well, otherwise, at some point, you pretty much wouldn't have the Summoner's Rift at all. It'd be just like a giant monster movie. Which is basically what it turned into yesterday. So G2 are going to have to watch themselves if that doesn't happen again.
One thing that is perhaps as big as a giant monster from one of those old King Kong movies is the CS difference in top lane. Although Cabochard is having a good time of this Cho'Gath, he is down against Expect. Expect spent a lot of time on the map to farm up and actually keep himself relevant in the game. And you can see he's gone Black Cleaver as you would expect, trying to just eat through some of that armor already purchased and will be, you know, helpful in team fights for Vitality.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's really only about 300 gold that separates those 2 top laners because of how well Expect has managed to farm himself up. So if he can stay relevant, that's going to be important, but obviously the Renekton strength was going to be in that laning phase. It's just not panned out. Meanwhile, we'll check back into the mid as PerkZ is pulled in on the shockwave, but he's got some friends coming to join the party. It's Zven and Mithy. The Nukeduck has got a few of his own as Vander has come up to join the rear. And this is where we start to get into this point in the game that everybody loves, the ARAM.
Well, at this point, this is going to be Steelback firing arrows every time it's available. And you can see that G2 have actually started building towards team fighting. It's not a massive departure, as Gragas normally picks up Locket at some point anyway, but of course that will help team fight presence. You get that big burst of a shield for the team. But looking at how Vitality have this massive amount of crowd control, G2 have to somehow avoid fights when everybody of Vitality is grouped together. And considering the speed at which Vitality can engage, that's going to be a very tricky ask out of G2.
Yeah, it's difficult for this team, and make no mistake, they still came into this series as pretty heavy favorites considering how well they had performed in the post-Rift Rivals weeks. But right now, it's tough against a Vitality that built themselves up for the late game, that have this crazy tank front line between Djoko, Cabo, and Vander, and they're dishing out a lot of damage. Granted, a lot of that's going to be an AP, but Steelback shouldn't have too hard a time dishing damage either. And of course, wave clear is pretty ridiculous right now as well.
Top lane play. This is
super
now, but the arrow should join.
Okay, they've got the box down, but it doesn't matter. Not going to keep them slow at all as Cabochard is sticking onto Mithy, who's forced to flash away. Zven gets the heal. Ashe comes out and it nails Zven in the back of the head. And there will be no dark passage as Steelback sends him all the way back to Fountain.
Delicious for Vitality in the top lane. This Tahm Kench, as we said, is so good at these easy macro plays where you see, okay, Zven and Mithy, they're pushed up without a tower, let's get there. Tahm Kench goes, Ashe, they know Steelback can join in enough time, throw out the arrow at a close range that it's easy to hit Zven and Mithy, and suddenly Vitality, again, back-to-back engages. That hook was a little bit of a stretch, but no real danger for Vander.
Yeah, Vander's in such a comfort zone right now on this Tahm Kench. He's been playing it so often, and this is why. Being able to get the engages off, bringing in Cabochard, it was great.
And look, this is knowing with full clarity that Vitality are coming. G2 have no opportunity to back away despite having 2 wards in the river, plus that Rift Scuttler. Look, Steelback's close enough. Out comes the arrow. Another devour by Vander. Steelback's the one that actually picks up that kill. Again, looks like Cabo feasted and didn't get the kill. That's a very frustrating thing if you are on that Cho'Gath.
Yeah, Zven not having the greatest of games for himself, and he did have kite ability. That Blade of the Rune King is going to help him. The Seal helps him, but this later game, the later this game goes, I should say, it's not looking as good for G2 as it could have been. Let's see, Nukeduck is getting knocked up by the seismic shove of PerkZ. Vander and Djoko are here, and they're going to look to collapse right on the G2 mid laner. Shockwave, and it looked oh too easy as Nukeduck claims the kill.
This is the exact thing Vitality were not doing last week in their series that got stalled out against Ninjas in Pajamas. Vitality weren't being active with their AD carry on Ashe, throwing out the arrow. But this is so much better to see. They're getting fights started, punishing G2 anytime G2 step forward and can't actually defend themselves. Like, this is much better out of Vitality.
Oh, 100% of the way. They have Nukeduck able to clear the waves as well. They're keeping their side lanes pretty clear of a whole lot of danger. And despite the fact that G2 had equalized them in those towers, right now, the pressure is all in Vitality's court. They have so much vision around the Baron pit. G2, they're limping by with just a couple of wards.
Yeah, their vision control, not really easy to assume against so many tanks and engage tools. Every time you step forward, you basically put yourself out on a platter for Vitality to get a fight started. We talked a little bit coming out of Champion Select about Yamato Cannon and the way he coaches teams, the basics that he instills. And this is perhaps one of the most linear compositions that you'll see on this patch. Massive tanks to get fights started with the Ashe as well. And Vitality clearly have done a good job at actually playing this out, knowing how to step forward in the game. And that's something that Splice actually attributed to Yamato Cannon during last season. They were very vocal at saying, yeah, without Yamato Cannon, we wouldn't have leveled up like this. And I'd be interested to know whether Vitality are of the same opinion right now, because this just has the hallmark of one of these Yamato Cannon drafts.
Well, it's certainly working out well for Vitality, but let's not draw too many conclusions just yet, because G2, they may be deep in the woods, but they're not out of the game. It's still a fairly close goal game, right? It's about 1,000 and still in the lead for G2. A lot of that's off the back of just better farming, being able to pick up more CS. It's still a pretty big lead for the Renekton. Obviously, it's been a little bit more even in the mid, and they're actually down in AD carry position, but they're finding that gold kind of out of thin air, and if they can start to sneak some more objectives, like they got that Ocean Drake earlier, they could still last for a while.
It's possible. We've basically ended up in a situation where actually, this is very similar to game 1 against H2K, but with less emphasis on late game scaling for Zven, where it's going to be Zven that wins this game for G2 if they're able to keep him alive in team fights. And with this Blade of the Rune King Varus that does have some % damage, actually chunk through the tanks. But look, he's got to survive through a Tahm Kench, a Cho'Gath, a Maokai, potential shockwaves, the arrow, everything. And look, if G2 lose these types of engagements, that's where it can all go wrong. But Cabochard, no teleport.
Yeah, and there's a big shockwave. A Steelback can flash right over the wall. Nukeduck soon to follow, and it looks like the damage is a little bit out. Even Dragon's getting in the mix as Djoko is knocking everybody apart, but Expect will finally claim that kill. So G2 just a little stronger in the clutch, putting that wall up and putting Vitality up against it, which means they should be able to secure this Mountain Drake.
Looked like Djoko was maybe on a different page to the rest of the team, because everybody else was backing away knowing Cabochard didn't have his teleport available, and that's a really basic mistake now from Vitality, ending up in a situation. But I want to praise G2, recognizing that teleport is not available, throw out the Taliyah wall, force summoners to have Vitality run away from the situation, and then pick up a kill, pick up a dragon, and it's actually proactive play. I'm glad to see G2 looking for plays like this, despite being up against such a tough composition. PerkZ rides the wall for the early bit. I want to see, was it Djoko getting blasted back by Trick, or does he choose to go in himself? Ah, Trick flashes out. Okay,
follows.
That's fair. That's actually fair. Trick flashes to drag Djoko back into the rest of the fight before Cabochard ever could have got there for Vitality. So well played by G2.
Yeah, that's the crucial thing, that Cabochard wasn't around, really allowed them to step up into that one. And yeah, despite PerkZ being pretty critical getting that wall down, he didn't dish a whole lot of damage himself. He just was there for the utility. And of course, the front line did the rest with Zven also pecking away. Now they've moved him and Mithy up to the top. But we've seen this game before, absolutely. There's the Lantern out a little quicker on the draw this time, but in comes Cabochard. Let's see what they can get done. He gets Flaybon back. There is the root. He throws down the Rupture. Shockwave pulling Mithy. They might just have to settle for the support, but Cabochard is feeling peckish as he takes a bite out of Mithy.
Despite Trick being there, it still wasn't enough to compensate for this. Now that was a teleport used by Vitality, and we just saw them make an error around their teleport not being available. So the next few minutes are actually quite precarious, but look, expect on the bottom side of the Rift is pushing down another tower. G2 trying to get anything they can back, trying to maybe force a fight around that Tahm Kench, but at this point, Vitality, they're committing onto Trick in the jungle.
Yeah. We're separated by the Weaver's Wall, not able to really get down to the mid lane, so now G2, we're looking to try and push that one out, but looks like it's Zven getting caught up on. The Rupture gets knocked back, but it's right into Zven! And he delivers him on a silver platter. Nukeduck will be the one who lands the finishing blow, and Vitality, they're going to turn for Baron.
Oh, Cho'Gath is so difficult to deal with. As soon as he gets anywhere near you, that slow on the new Vorpal spikes makes it tough to get away, and there was nothing left in the tank. Zven didn't even flash, didn't heal. He knew he was dead at that point. And now there is the feast available. Trick does not have enough damage to out-damage Cabochard. That's what you're looking for here.
But it's split focus. Here comes the fight. Can he get it down? He steals it away, and Trick with the godlike to take it away from Vitality as Steelback gets a revenge kill. But Vitality get robbed blind on that Baron.
At that point, Vitality commit because they know Cabochard has the feast available, and you just feast smite for Vitality. And at this point in the game, Cho'Gath heavily out damages on that ultimate because Trick only does just over 700 damage himself, whereas Cabochard's dealing 1,000.
G2 introduced a little bit of chaos in that one as they used all of the rest of their team as bait for Vitality to try and turn. Split focus was the name of the game, and it allowed Trick to get in there and make the plays. Man, that was impressive.
Whew, that one of those things that Trick finds the window on the smite. Looks like Djoko didn't even smite himself.
Yeah.
A little awkward timing there for Vitality, and now that realistically keeps G2 in the game here. So let's watch it. Feast is available as of both smites on this. What happens here? Because Cabochard and Djoko theoretically, like Cabochard, ooh, didn't quite get that feast down, and Trick just comes in and smites it.
Yeah.
Vitality just kind of a little bit sleeping there as G2 kiting back down out of the pit.
So, even though they took Trick out here, that's going to breathe some new life for certain into G2 Esports, who, remember, are still hanging on to this gold lead. I mean, this is the impressive thing, that despite what we're seeing Vitality do across the map, G2 are keeping pace with them every step of the way.
And G2, I mean, it's difficult. When they're down, they're not necessarily out. They can always have a little bit of focus on Zven in the fights late game and keep themselves going.
Yeah, 100%. Saw, honestly, earlier in the week against H2K, even in the game they lost, things tended to go pretty close. So it's not that surprising, I suppose, that G2 are able to do the same thing now, even when they're down in game one.
Okay, I actually have to give Trick more credit. I didn't catch it. I'll give him the credit in a second. As you were talking about, game one, very even between the teams. And game two was a lot more disastrous. But game three is where G2 took an earlier game composition like this and actually took off, as Vitality have to be careful under their tower.
Yeah, looks like G2 are trying to take off as well. But in come the Cats, and Vander's going to swallow up Cabochard to push him back in for round two. Steelback sending the arrows flying, but G2 are healthy as they continue to march these Baron-empowered minions into the base of Vitality, and a very sad Yamato Cannon looks on.
And the reason G2 have this Baron, I have to give Trick credit, because my eyes were on the Baron health to see how low it dropped. My eyes were not on Trick getting a body slam on Cabochard as the Baron dropped below 900 health, got close enough for the smite. So it's actually the crowd control denies Cabochard the feast attempt, and Trick comes in, steals it away. Look, now we're into a potential other fight from Vitality. They just used a lot of tools. The Ashe Arrow and the Abyssal Voyage were just used, but G2 were able to disengage.
Yeah. We saw some crisp execution earlier, I should say, and Vitality seemed to have lost a bit of that. It doesn't quite look as good as it did before. Perhaps a little rattled after that Baron play, G2 taking the lead in this game.
Vitality could have maybe committed bottom side there onto Zven, but they choose to go towards the middle lane. Couldn't end up getting there, and now Vitality are desperately trying to just push back G2 as far as possible for the last few seconds of this Baron buff. But look, PerkZ cast the wall, will deny Cabochard away into the tower, and G2 are going to get yet another tower down in this game.
Yeah, looking great as they're able to continually deny Vitality defense of their own turrets, of their own base. And it was 5 towers to 2, just like that. G2 were able to pick themselves up a Mountain Drake, and this is the G2 that I think we were expecting to see from minute 1.
Yeah, this is a much better recovery out of G2, and it goes to show that despite the fact that Vitality have these big tank front lines, a couple of botched fights, decisions around teleport not being available and trying to commit for objectives, and then not quite being able to execute around objectives has punished them heavily. Look, G2, 3 Drakes already, and 2 of them are Mountain Drakes. They have the Ocean Drake to heal themselves up again, and remember that Baron buff has done wonders to keep them in the game, and realistically it's actually meant they haven't had to take the fights against Vitality when Vitality are 5 people strong.
Well, let's see what Vitality can get done, as they are going to just melt through the health bar as Zven like it was nothing. Getting themselves an outer tower. Finally, Vitality able to make this power move as they charge with a scant wave of minions into the mid lane inner. Mithy there to defend, and PerkZ will join him. The rest of G2 looking to try and collapse. Vitality have a powerful front. See what they can get done.
You can see exactly how quickly Vitality get into the fight and get somebody down, and it doesn't help that Zven doesn't really have any opportunity to itemize away from the crowd control. Hasn't got a QSS yet.
Oh, okay, Cabochard getting knocked up, but they were stopped from entering through that wall. The barrel will come out to knock them into Expect and away from the tower, so for the time being, Vitality are fresh out of minions and can't keep this push going. But they are looking stronger as this unit, and it goes back to what we said at the start of the game, the scaling, the front line, the engage. It is all there for Vitality, and G2 are going to have to go the extra mile if they want to match them pound for pound now that we're into the post-30-minute world.
And it's all about protecting Zven. He's got that Gwynsu's Rage Blade, wants the double stacking on those Blight stacks from Varus, trying to get as many of them as he can to shred through the tanks on Vitality. That's one of the reasons why he hasn't gone QSS yet, is because he's like, I need to deal with the tanks. Otherwise, they are going to kill me in every single fight. Would like to see that come out soon from him, as that'll be able to deny that Ashe arrow being fired at him. But you can see how back and forth this game has been, and a lot of it has been through G2 outplaying Vitality at key moments where Vitality weren't quite ready, whether it was a teleport, whether it was a smite. Vitality just weren't able to contend.
Yeah. Well, G2, there's a reason this team is a 3-time champion squad. Now, the Ashe arrow, unfortunately, is going to be able to split those uprights. PerkZ is caught up by Djoko. It looks like it's Vander's on top of him, but there is the Dark Passage up and available. PerkZ decides he does not even need to take it, and the Weaver's Wall is going to separate Cabochard and Nukeduck from the rest of the pack. We'll see if G2 have any more damage left in the tank. Vitality beating a hasty retreat. Looks like they might want to turn back around. PerkZ throwing rocks. He's able to get a shove out onto Vander, but Vitality are eyeballing that inner tower once again.
Yeah, G2 have to still be a little careful here, because there are all of the team fight ultimates available outside of that Ashe arrow for Vitality. So despite committing to the fight at first, PerkZ has to be careful.
Exhaust on, he has to burn his flash to get away. Cabochard leading up the front line, but he's caught on a line by Mithy. In come the cats, and Cabochard is just gonna be able to walk out of it as the root's down. Gets a Feral Scream to silence out Trick, and they can't push forward anymore. But this wave clear is denying the push. Here comes Nukeduck. Can he get himself a big shockwave? No, he's knocked into the rest of the team. Has to move away, swallowed into the belly of Vander, and now Cabochard is going feasting once again, and the G2 jungler is gone.
Cabochard can eat quickly through the tanks, utilizing that max health damage from the Cho'Gath. Look at how strong, look at how big he is right now.
Yeah, dude.
9
404.
stacks, nearly at maximum size for the model. Cabochard, that E is basically going to cover the lane if he gets any more stacks.
All right, this time, I don't think they're going to have to worry about getting Smite stolen away. Trick's got 20 seconds left to respawn, and they are cutting through Baron Nashor right now. Mithy is going to try for a catch on to Vander. In comes the Ashe arrow. They've decided not to full commit to the fight, even though they burned the ultimate, because they know they got themselves the Baron. Shockwave comes in to pull them back, and now Cabochard is still hungry. Does not have that ultimate up and available though, but PerkZ is going to get knocked back by Steelback, or Djoko, I should say, as Steelback will finish off the kill. And that's looking great for Vitality. They get the Baron, they pick up PerkZ, and they can go back happy.
Look at how simple the game plan is from Vitality, and look how well it works. It doesn't matter that they're down heavily in CS in the top lane. They're able to just walk into fights, take out a member of G2, and then take a Baron from it. Ashe arrow comes through. They split focus and still end up okay here, because that's a beautiful shockwave out of Nukeduck. Summer really is the time that Nukeduck seemingly starts to show up. And look, from here, Vitality walk through the fight. Nothing more G2 can do. They've already lost the Baron. They have to back away, otherwise they'll end up losing the game right there and then.
I swear, when Nukeduck plays champions, they do more damage than everybody else. The guy's sitting on 2.5 items right now, or 3 items now as he finishes his Void Staff. And man, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Everybody knows Orianna is an insane scaling champion, but it's a lot of damage and a really, really well-placed Shockwave, as you said.
Well, at this point, it might be more damage coming from Cabochard because, look, his itemization and stat line is signifying that if he can get onto Zven, it'll be 404 AD carry not found with the Stone Plate Feast combination. Of course, that extra bonus health going into the damage on Feast. You get that massive amount of damage coming through. Hey, Jankos, just because Trick made an outplay doesn't mean you have to rub it in on Vitality and Vander. Of course, they go way back.
Yeah, well, I think Jankos knows about getting outplayed by Trick from time to time.
I'm glad you fired that shot and I didn't.
Yeah. I'll have to deal with that one later, I'm sure, no doubt. Anyways, right now it's a 4-1 push as Vitality sending Cabochard down to the bottom side and the rest of Vitality moving on the mid. But they're out of minions once again. G2 continuing to be able to clear these away. They're not down and out just yet, but it is looking closer and closer to a Vitality Game 1 victory.
But look at how ridiculous this is. You've got 2 Gargoyle Stone Plates. Cabochard already has 4,500. And then you get the double health on like Djoko and Cabochard potentially.
Yeah, and the Knight's Vow.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody on Vitality's dying here.
Just run in.
Yeah, gonna be a big one. Doesn't matter if they tank up all the CC, they can turn it around. The tower isn't even doing damage to them as they take it out. Expect has to slice and dice his way away. And now Cabochard's getting knocked and bopped by Trick, but it doesn't matter. They just keep pecking away at this inhibitor, finally able to take it down. Slim gold leads, but it doesn't matter. Vitality have hit full late game.
This is ridiculous, the amount of health that Vitality have. And as G2 try and chase down Vitality members as they exit the jungle, Vitality are just going top lane. They're just going to get more and more objectives and just blow this gold lead further and further in their favor.
Yeah, I feel like this is the perfect meta for Vitality. All that tank, all those tanks, all that health, it really suits their name as well. They're just never going to die.
That's fair. Unlike the bees, unfortunately, you know, the bees disappearing, Vitality, they aren't disappearing.
Let's not talk about depressing things,
to their health right now.
It's a fun time.
It is a fun time. It's been a fun game with Vitality's aggressive playstyle. It's been a while since we've seen G2 shut out heavily of a kill game.
And G2, honestly, it wasn't just that Baron outplay. They were keeping the game close paced. They got themselves all the dragons, as we've seen this game. And for all the advantages that Vitality have, the gold game is still only 4,000 in Vitality's favor. At 36 minutes, that's not huge. So it always seems like G2 have a way to get back in the game, but how do you melt through this front line? It just seems nigh impossible.
You protect Zven, he's got Giant Slayer, maybe get rid of that Doran's Blade. How much gold's he got on him? 1,200 gold right now. If you sold that Doran's Blade, you could either get the rest of the last Whisper component, or you could get the QSS. I think the QSS may pay off more in this next team fight than that Doran's Blade would. I think that's my hunch. Yeah. That's my cut.
Well, nobody can get in front of Zven and just kind of like block all of the CC because Vitality just walk through it and then get them anyways. And here they go again. So Shockwave gonna get Zven just on first. He gets pulled back in, but Cabochard finishes him off right on the way out, and Sven's gonna have to flash away, avoiding that command attack. But he gets caught him at the end on the route, and he's taken down by Steelback, evaporated in the blink of an eye. Vitality get themselves a quick 2, and there's no inhibitor down mid. They're looking for this base.
Cat scratch fever for Vitality as they crush through what is potentially the final team fight in game 1 to give them a 1-0 lead up on the league. 3-time champions.
This is huge for Vitality. They need to be able to take any wins where they can, get themselves some points to try and contest in the playoff race. But they are making such a case for themselves right now. Trick is trying to cut the legs off the minion wave to buy time for PerkZ and Zven to respawn. But Vitality say, screw that, we can tank these towers. 38 minutes on the clock, and Team Vitality are on G2's Nexus. And if the rest of the series is gonna go for anything, this is gonna be one hell of a series. GG Vitality.
Step 1, draft tanks. Step 2, draft Ashe. Step 3 is just fight G2 and
never die.
Profit.
Woo! What a game from the Vitality squad. And G2 gave them hell for a bit of it. did not allow them to get away with the cleanest of wins 100% of the way, but still Vitality fought and fought and fought and pushed their advantages. And they just followed the game plan to the letter.
And there were moments in this game that G2 certainly were back in it, like the Baron steal, we saw mechanical outplays, a couple of fights where Vitality ended up letting it go away. But look at, you can just see how ridiculous this meta is, where you just stack tanks and just run at people for the fights. I love it. It's actually a fun style to watch, and I think Vitality have a couple of key picks with the Ashe and the Tahm Kench that actually allowed them to do that. That's why they drafted it so early on in this draft, and it works out so well for Vitality.
Yeah, loved what they were able to bring up against G2 Esports and following the game plan to just do exactly what they needed to. Now, Vitality took a big surprising victory in game number 1, so for more, we're going to send it over to our analysts.
Thank you, Pyra, and may I be the first to say, tanks! Oh my god, tanks! They're so good! Let's take a chance to look at the pick ban. Obviously, tanks, immediate thing to stand out to me, but what stood out to you, Deficio?
So, I think, saying it straight up, said it as soon as we saw the draft, I got you guys as my witnesses.
That's true.
I think Vitality really won this draft, and I think they won it very hard. Not just because they drafted more tanks, but that is, of course, part of it, but simply because what Vitality did here was they drafted extremely safe lanes with fantastic scaling. So it's not the one where you completely sacrifice the bot lane in the early game because you have like a Twitch sitting there. No, Ashe, strong laner. Tahm Kench, good lane counter pick to Thresh, safe bot lane. Cho'Gath, fantastic laner as well in the top lane. Very like annoying to deal with because the sustain and the way you can always just like push the wave. So there was no lane for G2 to snowball against, at least easily, in the early game. And that's one of the problems for G2 with their draft.
Definitely was a struggle, but I feel like there was also not just like safe lanes for Vitality. I felt like a lot of picks that suited the players individually. Henning, what was your impression?
Yeah, I really got to praise my man Yamato Cannon here, because not only do I agree with the Deficio that it's a great draft in the current metagame, I also think it's a good draft for Vitality in particular. We've seen Steelback on like Caitlyn trying to play around him. That's not been working out at all for them, but on the supportive AD carries on the Ashe, we saw a lot of good arrows in like the early mid game setting up the plays. So I really would like to see him on the supportive AD carries and also playing Djoko on a tank that's not as mechanically challenging. I think the Maokai is a great pick for him as well. So really like the draft for Vitality in particular.
And obviously it wasn't like G2 couldn't win the game with the draft. It's just in the current metagame, when you get outscaled, especially by multiple tanks that builds Righteous Glory, Tahm Kench ultis, like things like that can always engage onto you, then it's really hard to play these early game comps because you got to execute them almost perfectly. So what G2 needed to do in this game, it was like pick one side lane to play around. Ideally the Renekton lane in this case here, because Cho'Gath doesn't have an escape. Taliyah ultis towards it, Trick ganks it in the early game. None of that actually happened from G2 Esports, so every lane from Vitality were just allowed to sit and farm for most of the early game, and then we got to see these mid-game moves.
Yeah, and while everything did look good for Vitality at the end, they do find the win. There were still some moments of weakness across the early to mid-game. We want to take a chance to look at a series of replays that kind of show us all of the small things that went wrong. Vitality, great opportunities, but these small execution errors were a huge issue.
Exactly, and the reason we highlight this is because after Yamato Cannon gives his team this insane draft, mistakes like these just makes it very hard for Vitality to go in and execute them. And they got up so many kills, but they end up in a situation like the one we see here where Cabochard is no teleport and suddenly you get caught.
Yeah, 5 versus 4 fight for G2 here in a situation where their picks are actually scaling quite well. I think this is a good time for G2 to fight, and also the execution. As we said for Vitality, 2 people flashing out over the Taliyah wall as Djoko was going in, not the coordination you want at all. Here was they also had some good plays though, setting up the side lanes with the Ashe arrow, with the Tahm Kench ulti, and setting up these sort of kills allowed them to go for the objectives as well.
Yeah, and they get more, and I felt like this game was a case of Vitality in terms of execution, made it hard for Vitality to win the game, but Vitality's comp made it very hard for Vitality to lose the game. So despite all these things we've just seen, miss silence on a TP, not feasting the Baron when you have feast plus smite, like that's almost insane you actually lose that Baron. Despite all these small things here, or big things actually.
The big one on the feast, yeah, the rest of them pretty small.
Let's just call them big ones. Let's just call them big ones. Going in favor of G2, the comp was still so good on Vitality's side that they would eventually win this game, unless G2 could like just run over them in no time.
And we definitely saw that too as we move later in the game. It feels like It might have been partially due to the gold lead, to be fair to G2, but Vitality feels like they made less execution errors after that Baron that went so horribly wrong for them. It does feel like they tightened up their play, and we're going to take a look at a couple team fights that show us how well Vitality were playing around the composition that they did draft.
Yeah, we can see here as they're setting up the Baron, the Ashe ultis and the Tahm Kench ultis were on point throughout the entire game, and you're not out team fighting the team of Vitality at this point, especially in a 4 versus 5. And as we get into the later stages, we know Ashe and Orianna are going to be really outscaling when it comes to the damage. And I'm so impressed by Vitality because not only do they have the good drafts, but they also know how to execute it. They were not able to all the time, but they always knew what they were supposed to be doing. That's the big thing.
And when we look at the execution errors, a lot of them feel like mechanical mistakes, not decision-making mistakes.
No,
right?
mechanical mistakes most of the time. And that obviously makes it hard then in the early game. But despite that, G2 got 2 kills in this game here.
Yeah.
I actually think G2 got kind of stumped despite the mechanical mistakes from Vitality. That was the only thing that kept G2 in the game, in my opinion. Vitality actually just had a much superior team fight as well, and we got to see that here.
And all right, I'm going to be honest, this is the last question here before we toss the break, but I didn't think I'd ask this, but if you're G2, how do you come back in this series? Like, what is the next move for you? Is it just solving these draft issues? What has to happen if they want to come back and win game 2?
I mean, draft is going to be a big part of it. Like, we always have to highlight that. Giving over Maokai Cho'Gath is something we're not going to see a lot of teams do. Last patch, I wasn't really on the Maokai jungle hype train, but right now, it's definitely picking up for me. I think he's looking fantastic. So G2 obviously could have grabbed things like, you know, could have maybe denied a Maokai in the second ban phase as an example and made it harder to play this tank comp here from Vitality side.
I think you have to choose a proactive route to go for. Like, choose a goal, like get top lane ahead, then that's your goal. And be proactive about it, because this game they were not able to pull off their proactive plays and just kind of fell behind step by step all the time and tried to abuse the mistakes of Vitality, but that wasn't enough because Vitality just were more proactive, especially coming in from the bottom lanes.
All right, so a better, maybe more focused draft for the team overall is what we want to see coming into game 2. Well, Vitality are gearing up for their most important fight of the split as they have a chance to take